Welcome back. I am Polymopicus. A lawyer stands before the court and makes an argument. The judge listens, not because the lawyer is persuasive, but because the system assumes something deeper, that what is being said is honest, accurate, and not misleading. When that assumption fails, the entire process is at risk. That is why the law imposes a strict obligation known as candor to the court, a duty that can outweigh even the desire to win.
In most areas of life, people are allowed to present their side of a story in the best possible light. They can emphasize strengths and minimize weaknesses. They can choose what to include and what to leave out. Court is different. In court, there is a rule that overrides strategy, preference, and even self-interest. It is called candor to the court, and it requires something many people do not expect. A lawyer must tell the court the truth, even when that truth damages their own case. Understanding this duty explains a great deal about how attorneys behave in court and why certain conduct that might seem acceptable elsewhere is strictly prohibited in litigation. Candor to the court is a professional duty requiring attorneys to be honest and truthful in their representations to a tribunal. This duty is broader than simply not lying. It includes obligations such as not making false statements of fact, not making false statements of law, correcting false statements previously made, not misleading the court through omission, not presenting evidence known to be false. In other words, candor requires both truthfulness and accuracy. Silence can sometimes violate candor. Omission can sometimes violate candor. Half-truths can violate candor. The standard is not say nothing false. The standard is do not mislead the court. The legal system depends on trust. Judges rely on attorneys to present accurate facts, cite controlling law correctly, disclose relevant authority, represent the record honestly. Judges do not independently investigate every claim. They depend on the integrity of the attorneys appearing before them. If that trust breaks down, the system cannot function efficiently. Candor to the court exists to protect that trust. It ensures that even in an adversarial system, where each side is trying to win, there are boundaries that preserve truthfulness. This is where many people are surprised. Lawyers are advocates. They are expected to argue forcefully for their clients, but advocacy has limits. Candor to the court is one of those limits. An attorney cannot misstate controlling law to gain advantage, hide binding precedent that hurts their argument, present false evidence to strengthen their case, allow the court to rely on a known falsehood, even if doing so might help the client, even if the opposing side fails to catch it, even if the judge does not immediately notice. The duty of candor overrides the desire to win. Candor does not end when a statement is made. If an attorney later discovers that something presented to the court was incorrect, there may be a duty to correct it. This includes incorrect factual statements, misquoted or misapplied legal authority, evidence later discovered to be false. This obligation can be uncomfortable. Correcting the record may weaken the attorney's own position, but the duty to the court requires it. The integrity of the process comes before tactical advantage. One of the most important and least understood aspects of candor is this: attorneys may be required to disclose legal authority that is directly adverse to their position. In many jurisdictions, if there is binding precedent that contradicts an attorney's argument, the attorney cannot simply ignore it. They must disclose it and attempt to distinguish it or argue why it should not apply. This ensures that courts receive a complete and accurate view of the law. It also prevents litigation from becoming a contest of selective citation. Candor also applies to evidence. An attorney cannot knowingly present false evidence. They cannot introduce documents they know are fabricated, offer testimony they know is false, allow a witness to give false testimony without taking corrective action. If an attorney becomes aware that evidence presented is false, they may be required to take steps to correct the situation, even if it harms their client's case. This is one of the most serious aspects of the duty. At this point, a natural question arises. What if telling the truth conflicts with protecting the client? Attorneys also have a duty of confidentiality. They are required to protect client information. Candor and confidentiality can sometimes come into tension, but they are not equal. When an attorney is before the court, the duty of candor generally takes priority over the desire to keep information hidden if that information would prevent the court from being misled. This balance is complex, but the principle is clear. An attorney cannot use confidentiality as a shield to deceive the court. Candor does not mean an attorney must volunteer every fact that might harm their client. It does not eliminate advocacy. Attorneys are still allowed to argue their interpretation of the law, challenge opposing evidence, present their client's case in the strongest lawful way. Candor sets boundaries. It does not remove strategy. The key distinction is this: an attorney may argue aggressively, but they may not mislead. Violations of candor are taken very seriously. Potential consequences include court-imposed sanctions, monetary penalties, exclusion of evidence, damage to credibility before the court, and professional discipline by licensing authorities. In severe cases, suspension or disbarment. Judges rely heavily on credibility. Once an attorney loses credibility with a court, it can affect every future interaction. Candor is not just an ethical requirement. It is a practical necessity. Candor to the court is one of the foundational principles that allows the legal system to function. Without it, judges could not rely on representations made by counsel. Litigation would become slower and more chaotic. Trust in the system would erode. Outcomes would become less predictable. Candor ensures that even in a system built on adversarial advocacy, there is a shared commitment to truthfulness. It is one of the quiet rules that keeps the entire structure intact. The courtroom is not simply a place where arguments are made. It is a place where truth must be presented within the boundaries of law. Attorneys are not free to say whatever helps their case. They are bound by a duty that runs deeper than strategy. Candor to the court requires honesty, accuracy, and integrity, even when those principles work against immediate advantage. Because in the long run, the system depends on it, and without candor, the process itself fails.
If you like this content, then kindly hit like, subscribe, and share. Caesar commands it.